Thank you, Mr. President. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Mr. President, Excellencies, members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen, allow me at the outset to express my sincere thanks and deep appreciation to the Kingdom of Bahrain for the invitation today to participate in this high-level briefing on cooperation between the UN and GCC under the agenda item of cooperation between the United Nations and regional and sub-regional organizations in maintaining international peace and security. It is an honor for me to present the first ever briefing delivered by a GCC Secretary General before the Security Council since the GCC's establishment. This is an important turning point and a new beginning toward greater support and coordination that will benefit all partners. I would also like to congratulate the Kingdom of Bahrain on assuming the presidency of the Security Council this month, wishing all the success. Mr. President, I had intended to begin this briefing by shedding light on the GCC and its regional and international relations and partnerships. However, the aggression currently carried out by Iran against GCC states has prevented me from doing so. Since the 28th of February 2026 and to date, GCC states have been subjected to Iranian attacks using ballistic missiles and armed drones. These attacks have targeted civilian and vital facilities, including civilian airports, oil installations, water desalination plants, ports, fuel storage facilities, service facilities, residential and commercial areas, and diplomatic missions. These attacks have resulted in civilian and military casualties and injuries, as well as significant material damage, threatening the safety and security of citizens and residents. In this context, the GCC strongly condemns these blatant Iranian attacks, which constitute a flagrant violation of the sovereignty of GCC states, the principles of good neighborly relations, and clear violations of international law and the UN Charter. Targeting civilian and civilian assets is a grave breach of international humanitarian law and cannot be justified under any circumstances. The GCC reaffirms the urgent need to immediately halt these attacks, restore security, stability, and calm in the region, and ensuring the safety of air and maritime navigation, and the safety of international supply chains, and protect global energy markets. The GCC welcomes Security Council Resolution 2817, which condemned the attacks and called for their cessation. The Council stresses the importance of implementing this resolution fully and taking all necessary measures to ensure compliance, accountability, and determinants in support of regional and international peace and security. In this context, GCC states reaffirm their inherent right to self-defense in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter and will take all necessary measures to protect their sovereignty, territorial integrity, citizens and residents without abandoning their unwavering commitment to avoid any dangerous escalation that serves no one. GCC states do not seek war, they seek the peace, security and stability that all peoples deserve, while emphasizing that dialogue and diplomacy remain the best path to resolving crises. Continued escalation threatens regional security and risks dangerous consequences for international peace and security. Mr. President, Iran's destabilizing conduct in the Arabian Gulf has exceeded all red lines. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, prevented commercial vessels and oil tankers from transiting, and imposed conditions on some to pass through the strait. Meanwhile, the conflict has expanded as Houthi militias imposed a blockade on the al-Mandab Strait, actions that violate the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. We stress that disruptions to maritime navigation do not stop at the borders of GCC states. They now affect many countries around the world which are suffering shortage of oil, gas, fertilizers, and petrochemicals. We call upon the Security Council to assume its full responsibility and take all necessary measures to protect maritime routes and ensure the safe continuation of international navigation. While the GCC stresses here the need to issue a resolution that allows the use of all necessary measures available, tools to allow the safe navigation through the Strait of Hormuz and the safety of transiting through it, and that Iran stops any attacks on the vessels and to ensure sustainable opening of the Strait of Hormuz. While the GCC desires normal relations with the Islamic Republic of Iran and a resolution of all security issues transparently, including Iran's nuclear program and the 3 occupied UAE islands, through taking numerous confidence-building steps, including adherence to the principles of non-interference in domestic affairs and abandoning destabilizing activities and the support for armed militias. The GCC also calls on the Security Council to take all necessary measures to do the following. First, immediately halt Iranian attacks against GCC states. Second, protect maritime corridors and guarantee the uninterrupted maritime navigation through all strategic waterways, taking all necessary means to achieve that. Third, include GCC states in any discussions or agreements with Iran to enhance regional security and prevent further escalation or the repetition of such attacks in the future. Mr. President, although this is the first time that GCC is addressing the Security Council, yet it is not the first time that the GCC has assumed its international responsibilities. For decades, GCC states have been reliable political, humanitarian, and economic partners to the UN. The Council has supported UN programs and contributed to stability across multiple regions worldwide, particularly since Article 8 of the UN Charter recognizes the essential role of regional organizations as an inherent partner in maintaining collective security. In this context, in March 2024, the GCC adopted its comprehensive strategic regional vision to ensure security and stability at both regional and global levels. Mr. President, relations between the GCC and the UN date back to the GCC's establishment in 1981. This partnership has deepened over decades through formal cooperation mechanisms. This cooperation includes numerous memoranda of understanding with UN agencies and the UN, which institutionalized consultation, information exchange, and coordination to strengthen joint response effectively to regional and international challenges. One of the most important milestones in GCC UN cooperation was the UN General Assembly's adoption of Resolution 79/295 on cooperation between the UN and the Gulf Cooperation Council, which ushered in a new strategic phase. This coordination is essential in crisis management, combining UN legitimacy with GCC's deep understanding of regional dynamics and specificities to enhance international response and contribute to containing crises. Mr. President, the GCC has never been a party to crises. Instead, it had championed peaceful solutions based on dialogue and diplomacy and has supported stability across numerous regional issues. The Council continues coordinating with the UN and international partners in crisis resolution and reinforcing regional and international security. Its accumulated expertise has strengthened stability, dialogue, and reconciliation initiatives. Among the many efforts that the GCC undertakes in supporting stability among different parties, and allow me to summarize some of the key GCC efforts in the regional files of Gaza, Yemen, Lebanon, and Syria. I begin with our foremost issue, namely the Palestinian question. The GCC reiterates its unwavering support, and the GCC member states make all efforts to support the Palestinian question. We commend particularly the efforts of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, chair of the Arab and Islamic Ministerial Committee on Gaza, established by the extraordinary Arab-Islamic Summit to address the Israeli aggression on Gaza. Saudi leadership of the International Coalition for implementing the two-state solution led to the adoption of the New York Declaration, later affirmed by the UN General Assembly Resolution September 2025. We also commend Qatar's persistent mediation efforts with regional and international partners to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza, secure the release of detainees and hostages, and ensure the entry of humanitarian aid to the civilians. The GCC also continues, and we commend the efforts to provide humanitarian assistance to Palestinian people despite the challenges facing our region. On Yemen, the GCC continues its steadfast support for UN efforts and its special envoy to Yemen towards reaching a comprehensive, just, and sustainable political solution that ensures Yemen's security, stability, unity, sovereignty, and independence. The solution must be based on the GCC initiative, its implementation mechanism, the outcomes of the National Dialogue Conference, and UN Security Council Resolution 2216. These are the frameworks based on which any political solution should be based. GCC states through development funds and Saudi Arabia's Yemen Support and Reconstruction Program, and in partnership with UNDP, has provided humanitarian and development assistance. Regarding Lebanon, the GCC has undertaken significant efforts to support Lebanese sovereignty, calling for full implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701, stressing the need for Israel to respect Lebanese borders and the extension of state authority over all Lebanese territory. We condemn the recent Israeli attacks on Lebanon that have resulted and are breaching the Lebanese sovereignty and have resulted in more than 1,000 civilian deaths, hundreds or thousands of injured, displacement of over 1 million people from the south of Lebanon, constituting 20% of the population, and destruction of critical infrastructure, including health and civilian facilities, as well as attacks on UNIFIL peacekeepers. On Syria, the GCC has worked diligently to pave the way for stability and reintegration of Syria into its Arab and international environment, based on the principles of unity and sovereignty, and creating conditions for restoring internal security and economic recovery. The GCC played a major role in lifting international sanctions on Syria and provided humanitarian and development assistance to rebuild infrastructure in the sectors of electricity, energy, and government institutions. GCC development funds have provided loans and development assistance across many countries worldwide in infrastructure, health, and social services, supporting reconstruction through international financing mechanisms. I would like here to highlight the important humanitarian role of GCC states, which provided between 2020 and 2025 humanitarian aid exceeding $14 billion, making the GCC collectively the fourth top humanitarian donors across the world. The GCC states have actively contributed to peace building, conflict prevention, women's and youth empowerment, and food and environmental security. Notable achievements include consolidating of the dialogue and the culture of peace. Notably, we were able to Bahrain's success in March 2025 in securing UN General Assembly resolution establishing the 28th of January as the International Day of Peaceful Coexistence, and Qatar's successful sponsorship of the UN Human Rights Council resolution in October 2025 on enhancing and protecting the human rights of women and children in conflict and post-conflict situations. In addition to Qatar's hosting of the World Summit for Social Development in November 2025. In humanitarian assistance, Saudi Arabia and the UAE ranked second and eighth globally among top humanitarian donors in 2024, according to OCHA's financial tracking system. Regarding food security, Kuwait, through the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development, has funded hundreds of projects worldwide to address food insecurity. In terms of peace and stability initiatives, Oman stands as a trusted regional and international mediator, exemplified by its recent efforts for reconciliation among different parties in the region, and also exemplified by its recent efforts between the United States and Iran. Mr. President, we in the GCC and the GCC citizens take pride in the high standing our countries have achieved globally, especially in economic and development indicators. The GCC is a cornerstone of the global economy, particularly since GCC GDP reached $2.3 trillion in 2024. Second, GCC states produce 16 million barrels per day of crude oil, which is equivalent to 22% of the global output. Third, GCC exports 27% of the world's crude oil, 11.5 million barrels per day. Four, GCC holds 33% of global oil reserves, approximately 512 billion barrels, and 21% of global natural gas reserves, approximately 44 trillion cubic meters. 5. GCC produces 442 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually. That is 10% of global production. These essential energy indicators underscore two realities. Any disruption in the Gulf immediately affects global markets, and this has become evident in recent events when navigation in Strait of Hormuz has been disrupted as a result of the current events. This has led to higher oil prices, increased shipping and insurance costs, and heightened risks to global energy and economic stability. Second, these indicators show that stability in the Arabian Gulf is not merely a regional concern, but is rather a global necessity to keep the world economy functioning and prevent a catastrophic energy crisis. Mr. President, I conclude by emphasizing that we stand at a crossroads, a real test of the credibility of the international system. Either collective security prevails and is safeguarded, or we leave the world vulnerable to the rule of force. We in the GCC are advocates of stability and partners in responsibility. We extend our hand in peace, yet we will not compromise our security, sovereignty, or regional stability. The Arabian Gulf must remain a region of stability, not a conduit of chaos, and the global economy cannot be held hostage to conflict. Despite current challenges, the Gulf stands as a pillar of stability and an essential partner in international peace and security. Thank you. Peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you.